Good morning, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with the Pathfinder School. Part of woodcraft and bushcraft is being able to improvise or create your own kit. And I think that that's part of the romance of bushcraft and woodcraft for me is I'd like to be able to craft some of my own kit. I picked up recently a couple of these Palco canteens, patent 1915. They're a pressed aluminum canteen, and they were very popular in that time period of classic camping from like the 1880s to the 1930s. This being patented again in 1915 makes it a perfect piece of kit if you are trying to stay in that traditionalism of the classic camping era. So I've got the canteen, but I don't have a cover for it. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of buffalo hide here, and I'm going to make a cover for this canteen, and then I'll probably just make a rope strap for it out of some type of rope. I'll probably just use some kind of sisal or manila rope. We'll talk about that as we go. But the first thing we're going to do is craft a case for this canteen. It's kind of an oddball shape, so I think it's going to be a fun little project to try to craft something of our own for our kit. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. We've got a pretty good sized piece of scrap buffalo hide here. It's been used in a couple other projects. And I really just need kind of an envelope for this canteen, sort of like this, that would come up about 3/4 of the way at the shoulders. And then because it's a hide, it's going to have some stretch to it. We can turn it inside out and just use it like an envelope to slide the canteen down inside of. Then if we had a couple ears on the outside of it, then we could put a rope strap or something like that through it to carry it by. All right, so just kind of freehanding this a little bit and staying to the outside, understanding that we've got some width here to deal with. So I'm staying as far outside as I can. I'm not drawing to the inside. In other words, I'm not tilting my marker in. I'm staying on the outside. Okay. So both of these pieces will be bigger around in the end than the canteen itself, which should give me that envelope if I just keep this straight. And I'm really only going up about 3/4 of the way or a little bit less. I want to kind of look at that and see how that's gonna look. So I'm looking at this, and then I'm thinking up here I can come up here like this, about the same angle, and that's where I'm going to put my ears. So I want my ears about like this, here, here, and this is where I'm going to put a hole for a carry strap. Basically, I'm just drawing one image, and I'm going to mirror that on both sides. Okay, so now I'm thinking what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to come down into here with this ear, like this. And the same thing with this one. And again, I'm just freehanding all of this. Now the other side of this will have a flap that will come over the canteen. This one will not. This one will just be a dip that will allow me to open it to put the canteen in. So we're going to cut this out, and then we're going to mimic it on this other side here. But we're going to leave ourselves a flap on this side that we can pull over the top of the canteen. Okay, I've got a pretty traditional pair of shears I'm using here. I like to do most of this stuff as traditional as I can. Obviously, I can't use completely period materials on this, but I'm going to do the best I can to stay in the tradition of handcrafting. I just cut this out just like this. This is buffalo hide, These shears are definitely going right through it like it's butter. It's a really good pair of old traditional shears. I think these came from Fort Boonesboro. I'm not sure where to tell you to get a pair of these at. You might be able to order them online from somebody like Jazz Townsend, I'm not sure. Okay, now remember, if this is going to be an envelope and I want the buffalo hide side out, then I've got to have this facing down so that the finished product will have buffalo out on both sides. Remember, we freehanded this, so these ears and things aren't going to match. It's not like we can make a half and half duplicate because it's not quite the same. It's actually fairly close, even though I freehanded it, but it's not exact. And now I want to give myself plenty of room because here's my flap that's going to come over the top of my canteen, and then I've got another set of ears there. So what I need to do now is I just need to trace this again here. And I'm only going to trace it to right there for now. I want to leave myself a little extra room for a minute while I'm thinking about how I want to finish this off. I do most of this stuff. When I do this stuff, I kind of do it just on the fly, off the cuff. And that's pretty much all I'm doing here. So I'll only do bits and pieces, and then I'll think about what I'm doing to make sure it's exactly what I want before I go further. The lines don't matter, but once I cut the leather, then it matters. But now if I cut this part out and go over to here, cut this part out and go over to here, and I'm only working with a secondary flap, I can always lay that piece back on top of it again. So let's go ahead and cut this side out so we'll have a match. And then we can look at where we're at on the flap design. Okay, so now we've got to cut a welt. Okay, and the welt is going to go around here to here. So it's going to go from one ear to the other ear, and it's going to cover this span right here, and it'll pull in, it'll draw in like this. Okay, so we're going to take another piece of this leather. We've got plenty of this left, and we're going to cut a straight welt the length of this. So to measure that, we'll just use a piece of string. If this one's long enough, that's great. I'll put it here, and I'll just measure it all the way around the outside of this piece, just like this. And I'll go all the way around. And I'll go all the way up to this other ear, which is right here. And that should give me a long enough piece. And now I just need to look at my leather and see where I've got a piece that long. Right here's a piece that's that long, easy enough. And it doesn't need to be any wider than that. And that's going to be our welt. Okay, so here's our finished welt. It's going to go right here, just like this when we're done. And we're going to have to sew this all the way around here and there. And I think we're going to go ahead and expose our laces. It'll just give it more of a rustic look if we do that. Alright, so I'm just using a real simple whip stitch here. And I'm pre-punching the holes with just an old hickory ice pick and a hammer. And I'm just laying it on here, punching 4 or 5 holes, pre-punching 4 or 5 of the holes, about 1/8 of an inch apart. Old-fashioned way of doing things, nothing speedy about it, but it's plenty effective. Gets the job done. I'm using some number 8 bank line. I'm basically got a piece of wood here, a piece of flat wood I'm using for an anvil, and I'm just using that to push that sail needle through. And like I said, I'm just using a real simple whip stitch and just keeping every one of them nice and tight. Okay, so we've got our welt sewn in now on one side. We just got to put the other side on here and repeat the process, and then finish things out with our tabs and our flap. We should be good to go. You know, one of the things that I think we forget, or that has become forgotten a lot of times in woodcraft and bushcraft, is the crafting part. Crafting is a very important aspect, or very important skill to understand when it comes to this stuff. if you just go out and buy everything, and I know that seems a little bit weird coming from a guy who sells gear, but if you just go out and buy everything that you need and you never attempt to manufacture the things that you need, you'll never own those skills in the long term to be able to repair a broken piece of gear. So you can see now the way this is going to sit in here will be like this, and this welt will come up around this canteen here, and it'll be sewn on the other side just like this. We got that in there a little bit crooked. Straighten that dude up. There we go. And it will look like that. And we can always cut that down a little bit more if we decide to in the end. But we're going to have a flap coming over the top of that that's going to cover that anyway, so it won't matter. Okay, so let's get our other side sewn on. That took us about 20 minutes to get this gusset sewn in. It'll take us 20 minutes to get the other side sewn in. Now you remember we drew this line where our ears were going up right here, and then we just cut it out right there. Well, that's where we're going to start sewing our gusset. So when it matches up, it's going to match up just like that, and that's where our gusset's going to start, is right there. So we just start punching our holes around this exactly the same way and sewing it in until we get all the way around. Okay, so we have sewn all the way around this thing, and now we need to kind of look and see where we're at and how this thing's going to go on here, or if it's going to go on here. Remember, we got a piece of leather here, so it should stretch, and it does just fine. There we go. So that's pretty much exactly what we were looking for there. We got a nice fit there. Okay. Now we need to decide what we want to do with the rest of this. And I'm just kind of looking at things and looking things over and seeing how things wrap and fit, because to me that has a lot to do with what I'm going to do next, is how this thing's going to fit in here. Do I want these ears even on here? Do I want to take them off? Do I want to use them to tuck around the inside like this to pinch this in? Kind of like that. And then bring this over the top. Just cut a hole in this and bring it over the top and see where I end up. Then I've still got to figure out how to put some kind of a strap on here of some kind that I'm going to carry it with. And that was kind of the hope for these ears to begin with, was just to bring these up to here like this and possibly sew those down. But if I sew those down, I'm obviously not going to be getting the canteen out of there. So I've got to sit and think now and visualize in my head where I want to go next. Okay, so here's what I decided. I know that I want this canteen to be able to come in and out of here. So I can't sew this thing shut. So I'm going to punch holes in these ears, here and here, so that I can just put a piece of rope through there and whip stitch it. That'll allow this to open up this way when I want to pull the canteen out. Then I'm going to punch a hole here so that this goes over the top and becomes my device for holding the canteen securely, even though it's not coming out of there because I have to stretch that leather around it. So I've got two different size hole punches here, and you could use, you know, anything for a hole punch. You could use a piece of pipe that you'd sharpen around the edges, piece of copper pipe or whatever. I just happen to have a couple hole punches, so I'm going to use one of them. And I'm going to punch a hole here, but it should stretch plenty to go over the top of that canteen. And then I'm just going to punch holes evenly on this with a smaller punch here, just like this on the ears. Down into the wood just like that. And then the same thing on the other side here, just like this. Okay, now let's double check things again here. Let's get our canteen back in. Pretty good fit all the way around in this canteen because it's got to stretch the leather to get it in there, so I like that. Okay, once we get it in there, Fits pretty good. Now, pull this over the top like this. Force it down around that lid. That's fine. Don't have any problem with that at all. And this is going to be our securing device, and then we'll hang it from these two here like this. Okay? So now we'll figure this situation out right here real quick for a buttoning system, and then we'll get our leather or our rope cordage on there to carry our canteen. So I'm going to take a piece of this manila rope here that I've tied a thing into. Cut that knotted end off of it here real quick, just like that. We're just going to run that through here, and then we're just going to whip stitch it, or whip the end of it basically. I want to leave myself enough room to be able to get this open, like I said. So I'll whip it up here a little higher and give myself a loop right there that this will hang by, just like this. And I'll just whip it with that same material that we were already using. I'll whip it with this fine bank line, then everything's going to match that way. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is we're just going to go with a traditional wooden toggle on this thing. And I'm going to go up a little bit on the flap because I want to leave myself a little bit of a beaver tail look there, kind of like a traditional shooting bag would have on it. I'm going to go through this several times like this. Remember that bank line is really good at binding against itself. So every time I'm going through these holes and pulling it tight and drawing it down, it's going to draw down on itself too without even knotting it, although I will knot it in the end. I can just hit that same hole one more time coming down. There we go. Just like that. I use that board for an anvil. Come through there. That's my fourth wrap. Now just put a square knot in it on this back side and trim off the tags, and there's no doubt we're going to be good. And that gives us our toggle on the front. Okay, so what we want now, we've got our toggle on the front that we're going to tie onto. So now we want to bring this loop up through here like this. So we're going to come up through a couple holes here probably to make that happen. We'll have to punch a couple holes down here in the base of this thing that we can pull this through. 1, 1, 1, 1. And this will go through that to hold that down just like this. Okay, now I think we got what we want. Yeah, okay. That's going to be nice and tight. That's good. Now, let's take our lid off for a moment. Spread this out. Get our canteen in. Should just be able to pull it right up by those ears. That's good. Put that right over the top just like that. Get our lid back on there. Put this right over the top. Pull it down. There we go. Nice. Nice. Then we can just tie that off at the bottom just like that. Let her hang, or we can cut it off either way. Now, I'm thinking that we probably should have something on here connecting this to this. We got plenty of this leather left on this thong. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten that up a mite. I'm going to use some of that. So I'm going to pull this up this way a little bit. Pull this down this way a little bit. Give myself just as much as I need and no more there. Just like that. Cut this off right here. We'll get us a piece tied in here. Just just like that. And we'll come over here and we'll do the same thing over here. That way there's no way that we're going to lose that stopper when we take it out to get a drink. Well, here's what she looks like finished and hanging, full of water on my side. Turned out pretty well, I would say. Nothing wrong with that for a decent piece of kit. About 2 hours worth of work. Well guys, I appreciate you joining me out here today for this quick video tutorial on how to make a buffalo hide canteen cover. We owe it to ourselves to become crafters. We practice woodcraft and bushcraft, and we owe it to ourselves to become crafters in our own right. I appreciate you joining me for this video today. I thank you for everything you do for my school, for our family, for our business, for all of our instructors, affiliates, sponsors, and friends. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.